Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Today, we're going to go a slightly different direction, not really a completely different direction, but my guest today is Erin Carey. She's the director of Rome Generation. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about what that means, but she is actually a PR person and has recommended several of the guests that we've had here on the show. And I'd had a little bit of communication with her back and forth, and something told me that maybe she should actually be on the show. And when I dug a little deeper and learned a little bit about her story, I was like, yes, absolutely, she needs to be here. Erin, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate having you here.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me.
And just real quick, so obviously your accent's a little different than mine. Where are you calling us from?
I'm from Adelaide, Australia, so bottom middle.
All right. Isn't technology pretty cool? Because I said where you're calling from. We're actually on a video call for those of our listeners that don't realize that, so we can at least see each other's faces. But isn't it cool that we can have this conversation? You're in Australia. I'm in Colombia. We're going to talk about clients and things that involve the whole world, literally. So super excited to jump into that. And let's start. This is kind of the normal place I like to start, because I feel like everybody I chat with has an interesting story, and it's not so much about what they're doing now. It's about all the stuff that happened early on that got us to the point that we're at now. So, Erin, how far back should we go to kind of get an understanding for why you and I are having this conversation right now?
We probably have to go back to about 2015. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we can go further back than that, but we can start there. All right.
Well, we might need to, talk about a few things prior to that, but I think really that's when we made the life-changing decision that we made. So
Tell us about it.
Things got a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
okay.
I am a mother of 3 kids. At that time, back in 2015, they were very little, and we were a regular family living in the suburbs. My husband and I both worked full-time for the government, and we were just kind of a little bit miffed about the amount of hours that we worked and the lack of time that we had with our kids. And we had kind of said things like, oh, it'd be cool one day to travel around Africa or go and live in Spain for a couple of years, but had never made any plans because at that stage we had a 1-year-old. But one night we were watching Netflix, as you do, and we hadn't discussed what we were going to watch. I think my husband just popped on a documentary and I was looking on my phone, wasn't even intending on watching, and he played Laura Decker's documentary. So she was the youngest girl to have ever sailed around the world, and something in that documentary just captured both of our attentions, because I remember putting my phone down, not touching it again the entire show, and we just sat and watched the whole thing in silence. And then at the end, the credits were rolling, and I remember we both just turned to each other and went, wow, we should do that. And that was quite honestly it. That is how we made our decision to buy a boat and sail halfway around the world with our kids. So yeah, after 2 years and 2 months of all the preparations, learning, saving, figuring it all out, we finally set sail on our journey. But yeah, there's obviously a lot more to it, but that's kind of the gist of how we went from being regular folk in the suburbs to living on a boat for 4 years and sailing halfway around the world. But now I am back on land, so I'm not living that exciting life anymore.
All right. I've got a few questions already. I know I'm going to have many more, but I think, well, first question I want to ask is, Because I don't know where Adelaide is. It's on the coast, right? I mean, most places in Australia are where most
Yeah,
people
that's
live,
true.
right?
Yeah, we are on the coast, but we're at the bottom of Australia, so our coast isn't as beautiful as Queensland. It is still lovely, but also the oceans are a bit more treacherous down here than they would be if we were on the east coast of Australia.
Okay, because I do know that sailing is a big thing in certain parts of Australia. I mean, there's some well-known things around sailing, but I'm curious, had you been sailing before you watched this Netflix documentary?
So my dad was a sailor, but we're
Uh,
talking on dinghies in an inland lake. So I grew up in Wagga Wagga, which is 5 hours from any coastline. So we saw the beach once a year. So I did grow up on dad's boat, but sailing, but we're talking like 16 foot at the most.
okay.
We bought a 47-foot boat. So we had never done anything like that. And my husband wasn't a sailor. I don't think he'd ever been sailing. So yes
All
and
right.
no. I'd say mainly
Okay.
no.
That's all right. And I guess the other part of the equation, had you guys talked about doing, I mean, you said you kind of had thought about maybe traveling to Africa or going different places. Had you traveled anywhere together at that point?
We were travel lovers, so we what did we do? We started off with the Kentucky tour around Europe, which is kind of like a rite of passage that plenty of Aussies go and do. So we did that together at early 20s. We'd done 6 weeks around South America, for our honeymoon. And then we'd done 6 months backpacking around Europe and Asia as well. And we'd been on a couple of overseas trips with our kids too. So we did love travel,
Okay.
but probably a little bit more so me and kind of like bringing my husband along.
Would you, okay, that's interesting. When it got to the point of you both were like, okay, intrigued by this documentary, you both took some actions and then you went and did it. I can imagine where maybe the person driving that, I'm not sure driving is the right word since we're talking about sailing, but you know what I mean? The person driving that, did that change sometimes? Were there points in time where one of you was more enthusiastic about the other and who was generally more enthusiastic?
Amazingly, and I really don't know how this happened, but we were both 100% on board because I don't think it would have worked out if we weren't. And we've never had anything that we've both been 100% on board about before or since. So I just don't know how it happened. Normally it's me having the crazy ideas and my husband kind of talking me off the ledge and then, we don't do it. But this time he was 100% on board as well. Like, don't get me wrong, throughout the 2 years and 2 months that it took to save, because we had to make a lot of sacrifices, there were definitely times where I was like, oh, I'm so sick of not being able to buy an item of clothing or, having to think about every single dollar that I spend. So there were times where I got tired of it, times where he got tired of it. But luckily, there was never a time when both of us got tired of it. So,
And that would be really tough if one of you was less enthusiastic about it because, I mean, anybody that's ever been in a relationship where you are attempting to do your finances together, you,
yeah,
it's very seldom that you both have the same priorities and the same goals. And so that's that in itself is
exactly.
pretty impressive. There's a few things that are impressive. One, just the idea of spending that time on a boat with your family and kids. I remember your story resonates with me because I remember, quite a few years ago, I came across a series on YouTube of a couple that were traveling around the world in a sailboat. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was the most amazing thing. I would sit there and binge watch these YouTube videos,
Mm-hmm.
not just this one, because I started watching all of them.
Yeah.
And my poor wife at the time, she sensed it. She knew that I was going crazy and I was starting to, we should do that. And our son was probably about 11 at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we should do that. That would be amazing. We can travel, we can write stories. And my son has autism. So I was envisioning this whole, wouldn't it be a great YouTube channel and blog posts? And
Mm-hmm.
I had it all figured out except for one thing.
Your
She
wife.
was not having it. And
Yeah.
in hindsight, we're no longer married. And I'm traveling full time, but in hindsight, it was probably a good thing because we didn't have that similar vision. And she's absolutely right. She's like, if you and me and Jackson were on a sailboat in the middle of the ocean, I don't think that would work. And which leads me into, well, a couple things. One, you started saving money. You mentioned that it was 2 years and 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was the first big like action step? Because oftentimes when we do something like this, there's something. It's like, we're going to give notice on a job. We're going to, sell a house. We're going to actually buy the boat. Was there a big action item other than just kind of saving? And I mean, what's the first big thing you did that it was like, okay, we almost can't go back now?
Good question. I think what it was announcing to our family and friends what we were doing. So I remember exactly, we were having like an early Christmas lunch. So it was early December when we watched the documentary. This might have been around the 15th of December. All my family were at the dinner table and Dave and I announced what we were going to do. I think someone choked on their meat.
Curious. Was it, this is what we're going to do, or we're thinking about this? How did you present it?
This is what we're doing. And that language never changed the entire time. And we were very careful about that. We didn't say, one day when we get on the boat or we might be going on the boat. It was like when we got on the boat. And I think that was a small but critical part of the lead up, that we just never envisaged that we would fail. We just knew that it would happen, and we used that language and we acted as though it was going to happen. So we announced it to the table. Someone choked on their drink. Someone almost spat a drink out. I remember my sister saying that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. My dad saying, you guys, you're going to kill yourselves. It's ridiculous. You can't do that with 3 young boys. And Mum was worrying, and it was a total killjoy. It just ruined the entire mood of the Christmas lunch. It made Dave and I annoyed because then we're like, they're not going to bring us down. We're going to do it even more now. So we were even more determined after their negative reaction.
Wow.
But I think just telling them that and going, can't put that back in the bag. We're definitely going to do it now. And them reacting negatively to it, that just made us want to do it even more.
I would think so, because if everybody's like, oh, that's so cool. It's, sometimes we need to have that little, I don't know if it's a chip on the shoulder, a little bit of somebody telling you, no, that's crazy. You can't do that. And some people will just say, yeah, you're right. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's, but there's other people, obviously, like you and your husband, that probably inspired. Was there anybody in the family or at that lunch that kind of came to you and said, wow, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you. Or was it all just kind of that, no, this is crazy?
I don't remember anyone being positive about it at that lunch. But it's not to say that they didn't get on board. My dad definitely got on board because he was a sailor. This was living his dream. He would have loved to have done what we did. So, Dad got on board. Mum was always worried, but she did pretty good at hiding it. So, she supported us. And we had a similar thing with Dave's side of the family, but it was almost like later and closer to the time when we're like, you guys still not used to this idea? Like, this is happening. But in the end, everyone was supportive.
You mentioned something interesting, and, perhaps your, people in your family will listen to this someday, so I won't go too far down this course, but you mentioned something interesting because you right away said your dad, I think you said you guys are going to kill yourselves, you're going to get hurt. But then you turned around and said that it was kind of his dream. And let's set your family aside for a moment and just have a discussion around dreams and how sometimes our parents or other people in our lives might have a dream, but they didn't pursue it for one reason or the other. Mm-hmm. And then they see someone else that they care about that is pursuing it, and maybe even with more obvious obstacles. So I'm just imagining, my daughter saying, I'm going to go do this, and with 3 young children and my husband. And I'm like, man, I've wanted to do that my whole life, but I didn't do it because, whatever, because I was afraid to quit my job or something. And in your business now, we're going to get there, but you've met people along the way as well that I'm sure had similar experiences.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that, or should we go on to the next subject?
Yeah, look, it seems to be pretty common, doesn't it? But I do
Yeah,
feel very fortunate that I think we live in a different world now. Like, it just wouldn't have been an option for my mum and dad. You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it just, they were, and I mean, even though we're, I would say, middle income earners, they were probably middle to lower, but yeah, I just don't see that they could ever have pulled off what we pulled off, just not because of them as people, but more because of just how the world was back then. I mean, Australians barely, I mean, going to Fiji was a big deal, or
Mhm.
Bali, back then. So I don't think they could have ever fathomed doing what we did. So I do feel very fortunate that we live in a time where, and I am also aware of the privilege that, we have that made us able to do that. But I do think that it is also available to so many more people than then they realize, because
Mhm.
we weren't special. We weren't rich. We're not rich. We didn't own a yacht at that stage. I literally had no idea what a yacht would cost. You could have told me it was 10,000 or a million. I had no idea. So we had to do Googling and, okay, what does a boat cost? Kind of landed around the $100,000 mark, 100 US. And then we worked backwards from there. But I think if you're middle income earners, you've had a job and you've got the ability to save. Honestly, we didn't think we had the ability to save either. We were living week to week. We were like, there's no extra money. We saved 85,000 in 2 years, and that was from people who thought we didn't have any money to save. So
Yeah,
I think what I'm getting at is, don't go, oh, I'd love to do that, but I could never do that. Go, Erin did it. They weren't rich. They didn't have a boat. They weren't sailors. They had 3 kids in the suburbs, middle kind of management jobs. If they can do it, then maybe we can too. And then just try and figure it out.
right. Yeah, no, great advice. Did you end up selling your stuff, or were you able to keep the house and do this as well? Or
Yeah, so we had kind of like two goes at it. So the first 2 years we were in the Caribbean, and we kept our house for that. And we also had leave without pay from our jobs. So we both knew that the minute we came home, we stepped back into jobs. So that was a great safety net. And we had savings. So we lived for those 2 years all around the Caribbean. I didn't have to work for the first year. And then in the second year was kind of feeling a bit, there's only so many white sandy beaches and palm trees that you can lay on before you're ready to kind of use your brain a bit. So I started using my brain in the second year, and that felt really good because I had never had a chance, where I wasn't working. We had done those backpacking trips, but this kind of felt different. I was inspired. I was older. I had a want to work and to make money. And so that really challenged me to go, what am I good at? What do I like? I had that time and space to really lean into that. But so that, yeah, I'm getting off track here. But the second part of your question was, after those 2 years, we needed a break. It seemed to be like this 2 year mark. It was actually about 22 months both times, where we're all just over boat life. Boat life's hard, and you just
yeah,
need a break around that period. And we spoke to plenty of other people who agree. Everyone's got a different threshold, 18 months, 2.5 years around that mark. So we came back to Australia in November 2019. And of course, then we all know what happened in February
hmm
2020. So we were stuck in Australia, essentially. What was meant to be 3-month holiday turned into 18 months back in Australia.
wow,
And after 18 months back in Australia, well, we figured this out more probably around the 8-month mark. We knew we wanted to go back to the boat. We still owned the boat. The boat, by that stage, we had sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and we were in the Azores. So the boat was just sitting there in the Azores. And we knew we wanted to go back, but we also wanted to feel a little bit different this time and not have all of the land things pulling us back, being a landlord and dealing with house and stuff. So we
hmm
sold the house that time around. And then we went again, but we only went for another 2 years because the same thing happened. We made the mistake of coming home for a holiday, And yeah, in hindsight, that was a bad idea, because the minute we got home, the kids who were now almost ready to go, one should have been in high school by that stage. The other one would have been starting high school in a couple of months. They all said, we don't want to go back to the boat. We want to stay home. And that just got in our head. And yeah. We stayed after that.
Well, you said I'm interested because you said it was a mistake to come back because then the kids kind of didn't want to go back. So was it a mistake? Like, now you have hindsight. Now you can look back, right? It's been a little while. So does it feel like it was really a mistake? I mean, do you still wish that you had not gone back, or in the end, what do you think?
It's a good question, actually. I've never really thought or figured the answer to that one out. I think we needed to come home. I think just with the ages of the kids and to get them back into school for a bit. My son also has autism, so I don't think we would have figured that out on the boat. It was always just like, why is homeschool so hard? Why is this so difficult? Now we know that because he has autism and learning difficulties, so we've got that kind of sorted. I do kind of wish we kept the boat, but then realistically, without selling the boat, we wouldn't have been able to buy the house that we live in now. But don't get me wrong, that kind of not a day goes by where we don't think about going back to the boat or talk about going back to the boat. So we are in this funny kind of limbo at the moment where we can't say 100% that we're not going back to the boat, but it feels a lot harder this time around.
You've got that wanderlust. I for those of you that are listening to the show and can't see Erin's face, I can see, I recognize that look. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay. So you've got this wanderlust. What have you been able to do to kind of fulfill that? Have you been traveling other ways or doing other things that kind of help meet that need, or are you just really lacking? Because I'm looking at your face. I'm curious to hear what you say.
I think we've been back 2 years now. I think the first year was kind of, the honeymoon phase. We were renting a house close to the city, and we were, trying to get out into the city and just appreciate all of the things back on land, because when you're on a boat, of course, you miss the things from land, and when you're on land, you miss the boat. Mm-hmm. But so possibly for the first 12 months, I didn't put much effort into filling that cup. But then in the second 12 months, I've definitely noticed that my cup needs filling. And so we made the mistake of thinking that renovating a house would fill that cup. And very quickly I learned that was not any sort of replacement. Sounds like the opposite
to me.
It was, honestly. And it's like we became these different people on the boat, and we learnt so much about ourselves and what we thought was important. Then we come home and we just go straight back to who we used to be, doing what we used to do. And so I think for the last couple of years, I've felt quite conflicted in like, who am I? What do I enjoy? Why am I here? What is my sole purpose? And yeah, so anyway, long story short, renovating a house was not doing it for us, and it was almost going against everything that we believed in, because, we were essentially minimalists on the boat because we had no choice. The boat was so small, and, we were living our life and felt so connected to the nature and the ocean. And then we come back and we're putting all of our money into a new kitchen, which has just been incredibly stressful and not fun at all. And we still don't have a kitchen because so many things have gone wrong. And so, my husband and I have said house renovations are not doing it for us. That we're going to finish off the bare minimum, and then that's done. That doesn't bring us joy. So what we have gotten into recently is camping, and it's got similarities to the boat. So we've bought a forward drive, and my husband's in the process of decking that all out. And funnily enough, it's got to have, like an inverter and a battery and a solar panel and similar things to the boat, obviously in a much smaller scale.
Land yacht, right?
Yeah, a land yacht. And we're going to go on a big road trip at Christmas. So we've got a month-long holiday. We're going to go up to Fraser Island and get into forward driving. So I think that is what we're kind of toying with at the moment. Is that going to be enough? Possibly. We're also going to try and get away, you know, as often as we can on weekends, long weekends, go camping, which we have done quite a bit of in this last kind of 6 months. So that's what we're implementing at the moment. Maybe a boat could be in our future, but it would be probably just, you know, down here in Adelaide. Whether those two things will be enough, I'm not sure.
I'm curious because as I'm listening to you, I hear, you know, we are trying to fill that gap and we're having these conversations and I'm hearing, I don't know if you're saying this, but I'm hearing you and your husband. So I'm really curious about the kids. Has there been a spot where you felt like they missed the boat, or is it just like, do they talk about it? Are they excited about going camping, or is this just kind of you and your husband?
Yeah, so they're definitely excited about going camping, and they all miss the boat at various times. So the problem is it's hard to get a day where all three of them miss the boat at the same time.
You might actually be able to make some decisions, huh?
Exactly. That is potentially why we haven't been able to come to a decision, because to get all five of us on the same page at the same day has been hard, but certainly
I think you need to find a new Netflix documentary to watch together.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Sometimes you got to stage these things a little.
Yeah, exactly. So the 15-year-old, like I said, has autism, hates school. He'd get back on the boat in a heartbeat. So he's like a tick. Middle one is loving football and has mates and is doing pretty good at school. So he's like the one that he can kind of go back and forth. He's also a traveller. He's applied for a scholarship to go to France for 3 months. Oh, cool. So he definitely has that wanderlust and the travel bug. But he's also torn between, but I'm coming up to doing year 10 and what, I'm just going to not do year 10 or do it on the boat. That seems really hard, or 10, 11, 12. So he's a maybe and swings back and forth. And then the little one, he's kind of like, you know, he doesn't know what day it is yet. It's a yes one day, it's no another day. I think he would also be pretty easy to convince. You offer him, $100 and he'll be like, okay.
Yep.
It's hard. It makes it harder this time around because they're so opinionative and so much older. Whereas when they were, like when we first started, they were 3, 7 and 8. They just wanted to be with mum and dad. They didn't care what we were doing. They were excited from day one.
Well, I have 2 kids. My son, who I mentioned, has autism. I would say around 14, 15, when I was watching the videos to go sailing, he could sit next to me and he'd be like, yeah, I'll go. He didn't like school. You know, he was in a spot in his life where he wasn't necessarily making a lot of friends that he wanted to make or that we wanted him to make. And he was like, yeah, I would go. And then I started traveling full time 3 years ago. The first summer I took him for a couple months. We did Central America. The second summer we went to Asia. Everything was fine. He could do 2 months, no problem. And now he just, this last summer he was 17 and the plan was 2 months here in Colombia, and we made it about 3 weeks. And he's like, I miss my friends, cause he's starting to make friends, and I miss my friends. I want to go home, get a job. And so your 15-year-old may, teenagers, it has nothing to do with autism. But other than the fact that sometimes, the child with autism a little younger, maybe doesn't have the friend network, and, it comes maybe a couple years later than some of your other kids in the family. But I trust it'll happen. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we feel we've got this very fine window. If we were to go again, it's like, we've got to go now. And we might be able to squeeze 2 more years. But then after that, I think, there'll be girlfriends and cars and jobs. So I think that also is making it a harder decision. I'm curious to know, what was the YouTube channel that you watched? Do you remember?
It was 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I do not remember. I'm sure you know. And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, is some of the people you met. Because the last conversation you and I had, it sounded like you had met some interesting folks that were doing the YouTube thing and in your travels. So was there, any stories in particular around that you'd like to share? Because I'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because I was almost waiting for you to say it was SV Delos. So that's Delos is the name of their boat, or they call it Delos. You guys in America have pronounced it
Sounds
different to
familiar.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had been watching them in the lead up to our trip. So it was YouTubers became an education. We'd watch them every single night, and we found various others. La Vagabond is also the world's largest sailing channel. They're Australian.
Yep, seen that. Yep.
And so,
Erin, is it appropriate for me to ask you if you have a sister?
I do. I've got 2 other sisters. Actually, one's single. But yeah, anyway,
I would love to meet somebody that would sit and watch YouTube videos and then go sailing. It's pretty cool. So anyway, so you were watching them.
So we're watching Delos, and they were like movie stars to us. We really admired them. Super cool people. But, they're on TV. You just never dreamt that you'd actually meet them. Anyway, we're in Grenada, which was where we bought our boat, sight unseen, mind you. We flew over to Grenada, saw our boat for the first time up on stands and went, oh, my God, it's enormous. How are we going to do this? Anyway, so we're living in the boatyard for 6 weeks. My husband's fixing it up, doing all the jobs that we need to do. And we go to the supermarket one day, and who should be there but Delos? They're in the supermarket in Grenada. We did know from social media and from their videos that they possibly were in Grenada at the time. And so it was just like, how much more is it meant to be than this? And there were so many moments during the whole trip and the lead up to the trip that made me feel like I'm right where I'm meant to be. This is meant to be. The universe is conspiring to make all of this happen, because there were too many things that were more than a coincidence, which I love. And I haven't experienced since being back on land, which does make me feel like, oh, is this where I'm meant to be?
Well, it's interesting because, well, no, I get it, because when you go to your family and tell them we're going to do this, and they're all like, no, I don't think so. This is crazy, whatever. The reality is, this, you 2 are different types of people. Your whole family is a different type of people than the average person. There's something about your personalities that, fortunately, you guys found each other and you had personalities that would do it together. But my point is that, in my experience anyway, I spent an awful lot of time after my divorce waiting in Arizona, hoping to be inspired, hoping to maybe meet people that wanted to travel, or meet people like me, or that at least got it. And then finally I realized, if I want to meet people that travel, I was hooked on the digital nomad thing by then. If I want to meet people that think that way, and that, I need to go where those people go. And for me, the plan was Thailand, because Chiang Mai, Thailand was where all the digital nomads were going. But with COVID, it was still kind of lingering. So Medellin, Colombia was the second place. And it was pretty amazing when I got here and I started meeting people that were like me. Like you meet, there's a few people here in Colombia that are not like me. I should preface that, that are here for other reasons than what I'm here for. But when I met other nomads and other travelers, whether they were from Europe, Australia, wherever it was, it's like, oh, we're all kind of doing the same thing. And it just there was nobody, well, maybe some Colombians think I'm crazy, but other than some Colombians that don't understand why I'm here by myself, the other expats, the other travelers, just everybody got it. There was no like, oh, what are you doing here? Where you been going? And like, wow, that's crazy. It's just like, oh yeah, cool. And it's the tribe, right? It's kind of felt like I found my tribe when I started traveling. And you get that too, working in tourism. I worked in tourism for quite a while before that. And back in it now, and you meet your tribe. I suspect it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that I have really cool clients who are involved in tourism. So that gives me that kind of, the talk about travel that I get to have each day, and thinking about travel, I get that through that. But
and you saw them when you were sailing, is what I was really touching on, is when you were out and about traveling the world.
Exactly. So when we were out and about, but that's the thing, there are a whole tribe of boat people, for want of a better word, out there with their families, or, single or as a couple, sailing the world. And so every person that we met was our people. And
Yeah, isn't that cool?
that just doesn't happen back here. So we just loved that part of it. We have so many good friends. You know, like I know that I could send a message to Lizette in the Netherlands or Stacey in America, and they would put us up if we said we're coming to America. But we don't speak to them that often, but you know, they were just
there's
such
that
good people out
kinship
there.
and connection.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something that I did hear about once, because when it became clear that I wasn't going to be sailing anywhere with my family, I came across something, and maybe you're familiar with it, but it was like you could volunteer to be a third on a boat, especially like if they're crossing the Atlantic or something like that. You need at least 3. So there's a lot of couples doing this, and they need somebody else to go along to kind of help out. So I'm curious if anybody's listening to the podcast that's thinking, wow, that would be pretty cool, but I don't have anybody to do it with. Are you familiar with that? Is that like, if somebody was listening to this, wanted to go, wasn't in a place to buy a boat, or didn't have somebody go with them, what would you suggest, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
What I would say to get started is to just reach out to your local yachting club. Hopefully, if you live on the coast, you'll have one. And then just jump on a boat. You probably have around the beer can races, they call it, on a weeknight, where they just go out for 2 hours and just do a course out in on the water. So that's what we did. The very first step we took was to just jump on a boat that was willing to take us. And so every Wednesday night, because we had little kids, I'd go one Wednesday, my husband would go the next. And that got us on a big boat that was 47-foot yacht. And every Wednesday we just had the hugest smile on our face. We loved it. And
what's the benefit?
Anyone can do that.
What's the benefit to the owner of the boat to let you hop on? Because I think I know what it is, but I don't want to make any assumptions. And I think people listening to this might think, I can't just go out and ask if I can ride on their boat. And I think there's more to it that maybe they should know before they do that.
Yeah, no, you're just helping through the boat. So, you know, you get given a position. You might be at the start just sitting on the rails, literally just being like a ballast. And every time the boat jibes or whatever, you just have to swap sides and go and sit on the other side. That alone was very fun because, you know, you're out in the water. It's summer typically, so the sun's setting, and that was great. My husband, I found it a little bit daunting because they're racing, and typically races take it quite seriously. So they were happy for me to just, for quite a while, just sit on the side on the rails and have my feet over the edge and enjoy the ride. I would do things like, you know, help pack up the sails afterwards and definitely muck in and do things to help. But my husband had more of an active role. He was like grinding on winches and sailing the boat essentially. He had some crazy experiences. One race, it was really blowy out there, and I think he was grinding on a winch, and then the boat jibed accidentally and the boom hit him in the head. And as that happened, someone fell overboard, and so Dave's like gushing blood over his eye, and you've got somebody overboard. And Dave's just like, you know, the stories that he has from that experience, he's you know, blood's going everywhere, and he's trying to winch, and they've had to go around and gone and picked up the person who's gone overboard. And he said he just like picked him up with his, you know, this amazing strength that you find in emergency situations, and just like yanked him back on the boat. So it was just experience, and you're there to help. So you've just got to muck in and do whatever it takes to help sail a boat. You'll get a job. It'll seem scary at the start, but you'll be fine.
I'm happy we had this discussion because I've probably watched more videos than most people, and I grew up in Wyoming in the mountains. We didn't. So when my initial response, when someone says, go down to the yacht club and find somebody to take you on their boat, like part of me is like, that's crazy. That's like such a huge barrier. That's like, go down to, you know, I don't know, in Beverly Hills somewhere and get somebody to drive you around in their McLaren car. I'm like, I'm not going to do that because these are rich people that own boats. And why would they let me on the boat? Because I'm not an Instagram model or whatever. Whatever stories I might have in my head, right? So I think it's great that people can hear this and realize that it sounds like what I hear you saying is the boat owners are happy to have you. They almost need people to help out.
Yeah, they're big boats, and they need people.
Shouldn't be that intimidated. You don't need to roll up in your Rolls Royce to go to the yacht club, right?
Exactly. And I know that yachting sounds fancy, but honestly, most people are just like you and I. Yacht generally yachties are pretty down to earth, and the guy whose boat we went on, they were definitely very wealthy. He actually had a McLaren. Funny story.
Yeah.
He drove his McLaren one day to the yacht club. Mars was just like, "Oh my god, he's got a McLaren and a yacht, and he had a powerboat." But I digress. They're both lovely people. They also, funny story, said to us, "Oh, do you know Riley from La Vagabond?" And we're like, yeah, he's like famous in our eyes, a bit like Delos. They were like, "Oh, this is the very first boat that he came on when he wanted to go and sail around the world."
That's
He
cool.
rang up the yacht club and we took him on our boat as well. So that was just like this another little sign of like,
we're doing the right thing. We're on the right path,
what is the chances of that? Riley came on this very boat and now we're coming on this very boat. So yes, they will. People in general want to help you achieve your dream. Like if you're got this energy and vibration of being excited and wanting to learn how to sail, they're going to take you under their wing and be like, come on my boat, I'll help you.
There's a parallel to my life. I grew up around hot air ballooning. So my father, my grandfather were hot air balloon pilots. I became a hot air balloon pilot. My brother's a hot air balloon pilot. And you can go buy a balloon ride. There's a lot of companies that will sell you a balloon ride. You can go buy a balloon ride for a couple $100 or whatever for an hour. But what most people don't realize is balloons are big. They're heavy. They're not something that you can just go out and do by yourself. As a balloon pilot, I cannot go ballooning unless I have people helping me out. And if I'm doing it recreationally, not selling rides, then I need other people to help me out. And guess who gets to go on the balloon, or the people helping me out. So if anybody's listening to this as well, that maybe they want to go sailing, but they want to go get around hot air balloons, find a hot air balloon person, somebody that has a balloon. You see one in the sky, drive after it, follow it. And when they land, introduce yourself and you say, "You know what? I've always wanted to be around balloons, or is there anything I can do to help?" I guarantee they will recruit you on the spot. And every crew person I've ever had just volunteered, or a friend invited them to come out, and they just stuck around. They never paid them a dime, and they got a balloon ride every once in a while, and you get the camaraderie and a shared experience. So it sounds a lot like that.
That's so cool. Yeah, it is. It is a lot like that. But that's such a great tip. I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah, and I'm sure people look at balloons. Balloons are expensive as well. Sky yachts, but that doesn't mean that everybody that has one has a lot of money, because you could buy a used balloon as well.
Exactly.
So anyway, it seems very similar. So I'm curious, when you started, I think you said the second you're in, you wanted to use your brain, and you started doing some work. So I'm curious what the connection is between what you started doing there. What did that look like? And is that connected to what you're doing now? And then let's go a little bit into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I had worked for the Australian government for many years, 17 years, worked my way up the ladder, and essentially I had the skills of interviewing people, writing reports and making determinations as to whether or not they got their security clearance. And I was like, how does that translate to any other job? I don't want to go back to the public service. I really will feel like a failure. I was very harsh on myself. If I go back, I've failed. So I really was determined to figure something out. And at this stage, I'd amassed 5,000 followers on Facebook, whatever, not a huge amount, but I was not in it to be an influencer, never had any plan on that. But the people that followed me loved my writing because I would just be sharing what we were doing. And I kind of put it out on there. And a lot of people said, we love your writing. Why don't you become a writer? And that was something, I would never have dreamt that I could do. I cannot spell to save myself. And I still probably can't tell you what a verb and a noun is, or a prefix and a suffix. I don't have technical training, but I got paid to be a writer, which again, you take that as you will. I think so many times we tell ourselves we can't be something, and then you realize, oh, actually you can. It's not as secretive or as amazing as what you think it is. So anyway, I figured out how to be a writer. I was a freelance writer. I was making enough money then to support our journey. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was enough to just kind of like get us.
And it was travel writing, or I'm curious.
Travel writing and
Okay.
sailing. So a lot of sailing publications, and then general kind of travel, but always with a sailing angle. And so I was enjoying that, but I knew that wasn't it. I was too slow. You've got to be really fast to write to make a lot of money in writing. So I was too slow, and I was second guessing everything. You know, I was at the beginning of this career, and I would have taken quite a while to get really good. But that led me to understand magazines and the media and working with editors and journalists and how that kind of all worked. And I learned the art of pitching. And then having met Delos a couple of times on a couple of different islands, we then bumped into them again. No, actually, I asked if I could interview them for an article. I was like, oh, you know, I know Delos is on the island. How cool will it be? I've met them a few times, but to be able to sit down with them for a couple of hours and interview them. So we did that. I took Dave along because Dave was just like, can I come too? And I'm like, yeah, you just pretend to be like typing the notes or something. And so we both went onto their boat, interviewed them, and had a really awesome time. And then, you know, I sold that article to various places. And then I just get this random email from Delos, you know, I don't know, maybe a month or two later saying, hey, will you work for us? We want you to be our marketing person. I'm just like, what? This is a pinch me moment. We used to watch these guys on YouTube. They were like movie stars. Then we just happened to meet them, and now they're asking me to work for them. Like, I would literally pay to work for them. So I started working for them, and then kind of not realizing what I was doing was essentially PR. And after kind of some digging around and Googling and like, what is marketing and what is PR, and then going, oh, I'm doing PR, and then going, you know what, PR sounds like something I'd be really good at, because I'm good at getting what I want, and I'm determined.
Summarizing it and presenting it with your business.
Not taking no for an answer, hustling, figuring out ways, okay, that journalist didn't write back, so I'll go to this journalist, or I'll do this, or I'll change it up a bit. So yeah, it became, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a PR agency, and I just did everything in my power to figure that out. So I ended up finding a coach in America who had a course in literally how to start a PR agency. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Did the entire course, set up my agency, and because my very first client was SV Delos, who were famous essentially, I was able to then leverage that and get a lot of other cool clients. And so my niche at the start was definitely in the sailing and sailing YouTube space, which was obviously too small in hindsight, but you know, I was able to grow that out, and we end up getting Predict Wind, who's the world's leading weather forecasting app.
Yeah, so, I think you had referred him to me. I'm not he was on a podcast episode.
Yeah, okay.
As well. Yep.
So, you know, we still work with them. They're obviously a super well-known client. And then we branched out to just general travel and adventure, because that is my passion. And since then we've had, you know, amazing clients, surf retreats and all women's tour companies and cycling companies, and you know, the list goes on, digital nomads, other YouTubers, Fearless and Far. He started off when we started working together with like 150,000 subscribers. I think now he's got over 1 million. He went on to get a job, have his own travel show on the BBC, you know. So I'd like to think that the help that we gave him with the PR helped him land those roles in the end. Same with Delos. When they started with us, I think they had around 300,000 subscribers. And then we organised a collaboration with another YouTube channel called Exploring Alternatives. And it just happened to be, by the time it all came about, right during COVID, when everyone was just sitting at home watching YouTube all
Wishing
day.
they were sailing around the world.
Yeah. And their video, like, I still can think exactly the start of it, is like them on this aqua blue water in the Bahamas, where their boat just looks like it's floating on air because of the reflection in the water, and they're zooming out on this sailing yacht. And as you can imagine, that would have just like grabbed everyone's attention when you're stuck at home on the couch, and that went viral. So that was super exciting. They got like 150,000 extra subscribers almost overnight, and, you know, not millions, but hundreds of thousands more since. So I guess that's like the power of PR. They're the little things that, or the big things that often come from all of the little actions that we take day in and day out. So PR's a marathon, not a sprint. It does take time, but after you've done it consistently for 6 to 12 months, then they're the kind of things that can come of it.
I'm curious because I've got my idea in my head of what PR really is. It sounds like you weren't sure when you started. You kind of, did some Googling. And I suspect there's a lot of other people listening to this. Some of the people that have been on the show work with PR agencies. That's how I was able to, connect with them. The PR person reaches out and says, "Hey, Jason, I've got this person I think, would be a good fit for your show." Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's PR people just taking a shot in the dark. I got an email today from somebody that said, "Oh, I listened to your podcast with Aiden from Turkey, and it's amazing, his story of growing up in the mountains and on the coast. And I think I've got another guest that would kind of resonate with your audience, and he does entrepreneur time management boot camps."
Interesting.
Right? And so that's not what you do. That wasn't from you, I guarantee it. Every single person you've suggested to me has been a great fit. But I'm curious, other people that are listening to this, maybe other people that have been on this show or doing podcasts, or just people that care about their reputation, I guess, that might listen to you. What's your elevator pitch to an adventure tour operator or travel writer, whatever, that helps boil it down really quick so they understand what PR is and what you do for your clients?
Yes. So essentially, we're going to share your story to help grow your brand. And don't think, I don't really have a story. Everyone has a story. So it's our job to ask the right questions, which I'm really good at because I'm inquisitive and with my background in interviewing, to elicit the information to then go, okay, amazing. You own a travel company, but you give, 10% of your earnings to a children's orphanage in Africa. There's a story there. So let's package that into a nice little email. That's our job. And we write up this pitch, that we call it, that we then send to a journalist, and we compel the journalist to write a story about you. And by doing that, you're getting a link to your company on whatever publication we get it in. Hopefully it's in Forbes or, Business Insider or Travel and Leisure, National Geographic. And so then you're getting more eyes reading about your company. You're going to be quoted in that article. You're going to have your business name mentioned in there several times. So then you're increasing brand awareness. You're raising your credibility, because people are going to be like, oh wow, if this company's in National Geographic, they're legit. If I'm debating whether or not to book a tour through one company or the next, and I can see you've been in National Geographic, and they're going to see that because you're going to put those as seen in logos on your homepage that you see a lot of your competitors have, and you probably always wondered, how do they get those logos on there? I've got FOMO. I feel like I'm missing out. We need to be in the media as well. So once you get those logos on your website, on your homepage, you've created a media page, all of that raises your credibility, because people believe third-party reviewers, and essentially that's what a journalist is. We don't pay the journalist to write about you, so you pay us a retainer. We send hundreds of emails on your behalf every month compelling journalists to write about you. They write about you through either what you're telling them over an interview, or we could organize a press trip. They come and experience your tour or whatever you're offering, and then they write about it from personal experience. And obviously then that's very trusted, because they're a journalist. They have standards to uphold, and they've got to abide by journalistic guidelines, rules, and that type of thing. And therefore we're raising trust amongst your audience, which
cool.
So it's PR. It's a hard one, because how do you measure the feeling that you're creating for someone? But that's what we're doing. We're creating this feeling inside the hearts and minds of your audience. Obviously we do have many ways that we can measure it. We can measure how many people have clicked on your link, how many, people have read the publication and all that type of thing. So we do have end of month reports that we send out that kind of tell you all about that. But when it boils down to it, we are really improving the perception that the public has about you in order to, at the end of the day, grow your company.
All right. That makes sense. Thank you. I just learned a bunch of your perspective is very interesting because I was thinking, so I do marketing and so someone can pay me to build a website and I can use some great stock footage and I can, create some copy and stuff like that. But it's a website and it needs, I think people need to have a good website. But anybody can have a website if they've got some resources to pay somebody to do it themselves, or everybody can have a website. But getting your story out there in a way that you mentioned credibility, trust, things like that. If you've got 10 different journalists or maybe a podcaster or somebody is getting involved in helping you share your story, you've got 10 different angles on your story because they're not all going to be the same. And those are just going to add something that a website just can't, right? Because there's there's that third party person that has to be excited enough about the story to write about it. Well, no, There's a few people. You've got to be excited enough about it to take them on as a client. Because if you don't see a story or you feel like it's not a legitimate story, then you're not going to get involved with them. And you're not going to be able to get the journalists to get involved with them. And then, so I get
and
that.
And then their editors have to agree with that story as well.
Right.
So it's hard. Like PR is hard. We put in a lot of time, a lot of hours and a lot of compelling. That's what we do. It's, we can't make them write about you. They have to want to. They have to see, at the end of the day, their job is to provide value to their audience. So Forbes just wants to share good stories. They don't care about you. They're not doing it as a favor to help your business out. They're doing it so that their audience can read some really cool stuff.
Right.
And that
makes sense.
They need story ideas. So it's our job to give them those story ideas. And so when people think, I don't really have a story to share, you do. Let us help you find what those stories are, because there hasn't been a client that we haven't been able to get featured in the media, dozens of times.
And I also suspect, I heard you say there hasn't been a client that we haven't got featured in the media dozens of times. But I also suspect you've had conversations with people that maybe they've got a story, but maybe it just didn't resonate with you. And maybe you're just like, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to help you achieve your goals. Not that you don't have a story, but it's just not the right fit. So I think, and I'm sure there's other PR people out there that I don't care. You hire me, tell me what your story is. And I mentioned earlier, I got an email today from somebody that, does executive coaching, I guess. I don't know what it was, entrepreneur stuff. So I'm sure you can find a PR company to take your money and send out emails.
Yes.
But what I really enjoy about you is the people you've sent me have all been really good fits. It makes sense. And then when I learned your story and learned more about your story right now, it's like, okay, I'd give you a big stamp of approval. So anybody listening to this that is, is resonating with the idea of using PR. And so I'm happy we did this. It was very cool.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's what sets us apart. We've lived this lifestyle that we're representing. We have traveled the world. We've smelt the smells. We've seen the sights. We can write effective pitches because we've done it. And particularly working with sailing related clients, what other PR agency can say that they've worked on a boat, or sorry, they lived on a boat and I worked from a boat? No one else has done that, and I'm pretty sure of that because I myself got lots of media because I was the only PR agency in the world run from a yacht. So I was in Forbes twice, CNBC, Business Insider, and no one ever wrote to me and said, hey, actually, I'm living on a yacht too. So I'm pretty certain that I was the only one. But
you're not just, I want to make sure everybody listening to this, my understanding anyway, you correct me if I'm wrong, you're not just working with sailors.
No. So travel, adventure and lifestyle. So essentially anyone who is like doing something cool that they want to share their story in the hopes of inspiring other people to do something cool. And they're the people I like to work with. So
you just described exactly the person that I am trying, I shouldn't say trying to get on the show. It's the types of people that I invite on the show are exactly what you just described for the same reason. It's about connecting and sharing stories, bringing people together. You know, in my case, making the big world feel a little, just a little bit smaller type of thing. So anybody listening to this podcast that would be in a position to want PR, it sounds like would be your perfect client.
yeah, exactly. And who is my perfect client? So typically they're a, medium-sized company to a larger-sized company, and they see PR as an important part of the marketing umbrella. So, you know about marketing. You can't just have a good website. You can't just do social media. If you're doing it all at once, that's when you're going to have the best results. So use us to get you featured in the media, use you to have the beautiful website, and to, I'm not sure what else you do exactly, but I'm sure you're sending out
we do some automated email type of stuff. I don't do a whole lot of social media, but exactly.
And then get your social media done. And it's an important piece of the puzzle. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know what PR is.
Yep. Well, if they've listened to this episode, now they do. So I'm curious, Erin, we spent a lot of time, we covered a lot of topics. I know I could just talk with you forever, but I'm curious, what questions did I forget to ask, should have asked, or is there anything else you want to make sure our listeners know about either you, Rome Generation, life in general, before we wrap up?
Well, interestingly, I'll quickly share one more thing. So, I spoke about the universe conspiring and all of the little coincidences that we had. Another amazing coincidence that happened was, remember how I said Laura Decker was the first documentary that we watched, that inspired us to do the boat trip. And then we took our boat over to the Azores. We went home to Australia for 18 months. We came back to the Azores. And who should be in the Azores? Laura Decker. So we also got to meet Laura Decker and go on her boat and get a tour of her boat and just chat with her, get photos with her. What are the chances of that? So cool. So it was like this full circle. We met both of the people that inspired us hugely, and we actually got to thank them and say, Laura, you changed the course of our life. She was just like, oh, she must hear that all the time. But for us, it was like, this is huge. Meeting you is just so incredible. And she was just like, oh, okay, thank you. She was probably a bit overwhelmed and freaked out by us. But
well, see, to her, maybe at that moment, you're just walking up, we're sailing. You changed her life. We watched your documentary. But that's a 30-second conversation, a 2-minute conversation, whatever. I think if she were listened to this whole episode and the things we just discussed, be like, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't, just some crazy rich kids from Australia that convince their parents to buy them a sailboat, type of thing. I mean, what I love about your story is just like, because you mentioned it a few times, and when you get to the point of they had asked you to do their marketing for them, and you weren't sure if it was marketing, weren't really sure how to do it, but you figured it out. Or actually, even before that, you mentioned writing.
Figured it out.
I figured it out. Sailing, I figured it out.
Guess we're pretty good at figuring shit out.
Figured it out. So the whole theme that I just heard through this whole conversation was fucking just figure. Maybe I shouldn't use that language. Maybe, but
I know, but it fires you up. It's like
you can figure it out. If you want to do something, figure it out. You don't have money to buy a boat, figure it out. You're living week to week, but you want to, you want to become a writer, figure it out. You want to be a digital nomad, because I'm asking these questions because I've faced some of the same things. I remember the first massive action I took to become a digital nomad. I walked down and gave a notice on my apartment that was my boat, was my safety net, was my, my bachelor pad after the divorce that just that I decorated so I could feel comfortable. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
big, difficult thing to do. But I knew as soon as I gave notice on the apartment, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to rescind it for just the reasons at this place. And I'd have to do
Mm-hmm.
something because I wasn't in a position to go get another apartment and I didn't want to live with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so I was like,
That's pretty good incentive, that last bit.
like my options are
Yeah.
basically live with my mom or buy a plane ticket and go find an
Yeah.
Airbnb somewhere that's probably cheap, that not probably is much cheaper than the apartment I had in Arizona. Anyway, so I just love that theme of just go figure stuff out. And then I love that you shared that story at the end.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting.
The universe rewards you, and I know that sounds a bit woo, but there were so many things that happened that made me believe in the woo-woo after all the boat stuff. But did the universe reward you when you took that massive step? Did things just happen for you and fall into place?
Yeah, because I dreamed about it. I mean, I dreamed about it for years, from watching sailboat videos to, okay, well, divorce is not pleasant. My ex-wife's a wonderful person, and I was still dreaming about it. And I was doing, I was working in real estate. I was a real estate agent. My last job, there for a while near the end of the marriage, and for a while after I was divorced, and that's not my thing. To me, that's like, so when you mentioned remodeling the house, trying to fill your void by remodeling the house, like I sold my balloon ride business and went into real estate.
Yeah, wow.
It was like, whoa, this is definitely not filling the void. So so I get it. It's about taking action, even when you don't know how. You don't have to take all the action, like just one step. For you, it was tell the family. You didn't know how you were going to raise the money to buy the boat. You didn't know how you were going to learn to sail. You didn't know how you were going to do any of it. But you knew that if we told the family we were doing it and they didn't believe us, then we would just do it. Right.
Yeah.
So I just tell people, figure out that one thing, not all of it. Figure out the one thing that if I do this, it's going to make it really hard to go back the other direction.
Yeah.
Do that one thing. And then it makes it hard to go back, but it also makes it a lot easier to go forward.
100%. Yeah. And another good one is set a date. Even if it's 2 years, don't make it too far in advance. 5 years, I feel, is too far. But if you set a date, even if you don't end up going on exactly that date, if you speak about that date and act as though you're going on that date, you'll be amazing. You'll be amazed how things just fall into place.
And the value of the words, because you mentioned we're not like when we get on the boat. It's like we're not if we get on the boat. It's when we get on the boat. You had an idea what that meant something to you. Because I went and gave notice in my apartment, and then the other thing I did, I went to Facebook, I think, and changed like my little tagline that said "Digital Nomad and World Explorer." I hadn't even bought the ticket yet, but I gave notice in my apartment, and I've got about 5,000 followers on my Facebook. I've done some different weird things in the past that I generated a few followers that I won't discuss on this show, but they're not travel related. They're weird stuff. Coaching stuff, which whatever.
My brain's going, I think I'm thinking weirder stuff than what you're talking about now.
I'll share. Someone's going to hear this and say, "That's weird, Jason." But I was a dating relationship coach for a while.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I did the real estate. I actually got out of real estate, got into dating and coaching relationships, or dating and relationship coaching, because it would give me the opportunity to go travel the world and be a nomad and all that stuff. So anyway, I know the value of just making.
Hitch.
Yeah, well.
Did you do
not
the
really, but most people say that. It was it was more about, for me, it was mostly about repairing relationships, because I'd been through a divorce and I didn't want anybody else to. I'd learned a lot during the process, and I didn't want anybody else to have to learn things the hard way like I did. So anyway, that was a different life. But one of the things I learned was sometimes you just declare that you're going to do something, and it makes a tremendous impact on your ability to do it. I was a dating relationship coach, and I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I didn't get any formal training. I just read a lot of books, and I put on my Facebook profile, I'm a dating relationship coach. And guess what? I got my first client in a week.
Wow.
But anyway, and it was a good experience. But same thing with being a nomad. It's like, okay, I'm a digital nomad and world traveler. You just sometimes you just put things out there, and it helps you. You start to. Your identity is so important, right? What's your identity? I am a sailor.
Exactly.
Like I'm in a boat, but I'm a sailor or whatever. Yeah. And people will do what they believe that they are. I remember actually a story of this guy, these corporate guys that used to travel a lot or whatever. And one guy'd get up in the morning every morning at like 5 a.m, wherever they were, at the hotel, whatever, and he'd go out in rain, whether it was raining, snowing, or whatever. And I think his buddy, I think the story is something like, why do you do that? Why do you get up and run every morning and do all this stuff? It's really, the weather is miserable, all that stuff. And it's just simply just looked at him and said, because I'm a runner. There's nothing more you need to know. If you're a runner, you go running. So if you're like, I hate to run, but I have to run because I'm overweight and I need to get in shape, that's not very inspiring. So anyway.
No, you're right. So I'm a sailor without a boat.
Yeah.
I need to sort that out.
No, I actually, the last, I think it was after I gave notice in my apartment, I was in the US for a month and a half. And I immediately said, I'm a nomad. I'm just currently in Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm in Arizona. I'm a nomad. It's a lot of life is about who you decide to be and what identity you decide to give yourself. And so anyway, great conversation. I may go back and edit the whole part out about the dating relationship coaching, but
no, that was interesting.
We'll see.
Yeah. We'll just don't leave in the weird part because then people's brains are going to be thinking,
Well, I trust that anybody who's listening to this is hopefully listening to another episode as well, but no. What that business is one of the steps that got me where I'm at right now. So I am actually not ashamed of it.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, Erin, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on the show much. And look forward to working on more projects with you in the future, and have a great day because it's early in the morning. Well, it's still the morning over there. So have a great day. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Had an awesome time.
Thanks.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.